966.
This is the 966. Richard, a special episode of the 966. We're not going to call it an emergency pod, but if there's ever been a situation in which we need to do an emergency podcast, this is it. Hello, nice to see you, Richard. How are you?
Great to see you. Kudos to you. So Lucien's just arrived in Riyadh. Just got off the plane, and the news broke. And so, you're up for this. So it's in the evening there, afternoon here, and your circadian rhythms are shot.
Destroyed. Yes,
you're down for this. This is actually one of the great things about the 966. And a normal episode may take months to book someone, and then of course there's preparation, and we do research and this and that, and then we execute it, and then you produce it. And so in this one, we're going to try and turn around in a matter of hours.
Mm-hmm. And Richard, this one is not months in the making, it's years in the making, 90 episodes in the making, in fact, because this is a beat we've been covering for this coming week will be our 90th episode. So very, very exciting news, very surprising news, Richard. LIV Golf and the PGA Tour will merge. This is a breaking news story we heard, just as Richard mentioned, just an hour ago or so. No one outside the PIF or Ponte Verde saw coming in Florida. Real shocker here. So we just wanted to do a short episode here to react to it, because we started texting immediately when it happened, and we were like, let's just jump on a podcast and do this. First, if we could just present with some news as we know it right now. The announcement was made about 2 hours ago. The two leagues will merge. The PGA Tour and LIV Golf will merge. A new entity will be formed to unify golf, a commercial entity, which will be, and I hope you're sitting down if you're listening to this, chaired by Yasser Al-Rumayyan, and Jay Monahan will be the CEO. So we have pure collaboration here. This new entity will merge the commercial aspects of the PGA, LIV Golf, and the DP World Tour, and the PGA will still maintain a non-profit arm. And there was a release by the PGA, by Jay Monahan, that was available on Twitter earlier, that stated that the nonprofit arm will still be in operation, but that there are some details that need to be hammered out. But anyway, the news is there. And we will talk about that PGA letter in just a bit. But this also does, Richard, and I want you to jump in right after this does end a very seismic legal dispute between the two organizations, and ostensibly or theoretically should pave the way for LIV players to play on the PGA Tour again and vice versa. So Richard, so much to unpack here. I'm going to hand the golf clique, or the Klieg, over to you. Is it clique? It's clique. Yeah. The talking clique to you. I want you to react to this.
I think this needs a mashie. This needs a mashie, which I think is another term.
I did not bring my LIV Golf hat to Riyadh. It seemed like bringing sand to the desert. So no hat for the, but if you want to range goat it up, there it is. Nice. Okay.
There it is. I probably should range goat it up, shouldn't I? But no, I don't want to feel. No, I don't want. If we can both do it, that'd be good. But
I know. I'm sorry. I should have thought. I should have known this.
No. Well, there's no reason why you got to pack a bunch of stuff, including that microphone, which is a good effort. We couldn't get a proper adjective for this, could we? Stunning was not sufficient.
Stunning is not sufficient. Jaw dropping. Yep.
So great intro. The only thing I would add is apparently, in terms of the legal aspects, they're saying there are three entities merged. They're counting the DP Tour, which is the European Tour, as a third entity. And I think there are things still to be determined here, and it's a fascinating announcement. Obviously, we haven't seen every aspect of the agreement, and it does leave some things to be determined, like the status of LIV golfers. It very specifically says that they can reapply for membership of the PGA Tour, and obviously I would think this is all agreed that everyone's going to be back to status quo ante. There's a complete halt of any recruiting, so LIV won't recruit anymore. It's unclear, and what I understand is the DP Tour, and again from reading this, the DP Tour, the PGA Tour, the LIV Tour, they will all pursue their current schedules, but this is now a united, cohesive endeavor, and there's some really interesting aspects, like the PIF will initially be the exclusive investor in the new entity alongside the PGA Tour, LIV Golf, and DP World Tour. So it's a new entity with those three, with PIF exclusive investor. And going forward, PIF will have the exclusive right to further invest in the new entity, including a right of first refusal on any capital that may be invested in the new entity, including into the PGA Tour, LIV Golf, and DP World Tour. So this is sort of, earth-shaking stuff. A lot of nice quotes from Jay Monahan, from Yasser Rumayyan. Obviously, these two parties, are in court right now, or have been in court, and all that is suspended. I would say, I recall, and we touched on this, in December, the New York Times did a piece on LIV Golf, and they talked about some of the consulting firms involved, specifically McKinsey. And, this is early 2021. Apparently, the proposal for Saudi Arabia, PIF, to support a new golf tour was called Project Wedge. Again, this is early 2021. We're just, we just reached, June 2023. So just barely over 2 years later. And McKinsey, according to that report, basically said, there are three potential. First of all, they said it's a high risk, high reward endeavor, quote unquote. Consultants thought there were like three possible outcomes. One would be a franchise. This is for a franchise driven league, because that's, how LIV saw it going forward. One outcome was languishing as a startup. A second outcome, realizing a quote coexistence with the PGA Tour, or, and this is most ambitiously, seizing the mantle of dominance. That's the terms used. I don't, the speed with which this is unfolded is extraordinary, and now PIF is an equal partner with the PGA and the DP Tour in a matter of 2 years, and I would attribute this to a couple things. And Lucien, you can shoot me down on this or disagree or expand on it, I'm sure. More than a couple things. One, the amount of money. Obviously, PIF came in, and part of that was, we're not only going to spend a lot of money, we are committed to doing this as needed, year going on. And we've talked about that. They've already laid out their, that there are 14 this year, 14 tournaments, 14 year 2024, 14 2025. So it's clear that PIF was going to be in for the long run. And that's something they consistently said, we're here for the long run. Two, they were right. In that study that I mentioned, the consultant said, okay, well, why do you do this? You're breaking into a sport with a dwindling, aging fan base. Okay, it's pretty wealthy, but it's an aging, diminishing fan base. And LIV came in with new ideas, completely new approach in many ways. And one of the fascinating things about this agreement, and I want to come back to three, which is something I'd be interested in your thoughts on, is quite specifically in this agreement, the team concept is going to be preserved. And, whatever happens, and we've talked about the 54-hole concept and how that thing, may play out, and the music or whatever. But, in the agreement, in the announcement, it specifically talked about the team concept. And obviously we know that the purses in the PGA and the DP Tour have been blown up in response to the LIV, because, and they've also changed the type of fields on many events, make them smaller and not with no cuts. The third thing, and you should jump back in here. The third thing is, I'm really interested in the sort of hinge role that the DP Tour played, because they're sort of stuck in the middle, because they want PIF's advertising, they want PIF's investment, that sort of thing. But of course, they have this relationship with the PGA, although it is a separate entity. So, I wonder if they're all in the room, and what kind of role the DPA, and this would be Keith Pelly, who's the CEO of the DP Tour, what kind of role he's played as a moderator, as a guy, why don't we work this out? Because again, they're in litigation. It's a contentious relationship, clearly, but all of a sudden we go from there to this agreement.
Yeah, I mean, all of those were really good points, Richard, and I do want to address some of them. And now, because you made so many good points, I've kind of lost where I want to go on your
Sorry.
list. But I mean, so just the last thing you said, that's super interesting because it's like, you know, I think we would be shocked. This would be shocking, and it wasn't really totally plausible, but it would be shocking if Live Golf and the DP World Tour merged. Then you'd really have a sort of, you know, mano a mano, like two-headed, like a really you know, a fair balance in the two tours, because you'd have some more of the legitimacy from the DP World Tour, and you'd have the Live Golf with the PIF backing, so, you know, money, and you'd have the PGA, which was preponderant until today. So that is super interesting. I mean, it's really, then this is why we're doing a podcast. It's really hard to wrap our heads around how significant this is. Probably the biggest story in the history of the game as a business, because just earth-shattering, I think, is what you used earlier. Let's go with earth-shattering. You mentioned about points and sort of how the integration will work. That's still behind the doors of the sausage making factory. We don't really know that yet, but we can assume that's coming. And therefore we can assume that we're going to see more live players in majors. That's amazing. I think that brings me to another point. I'm going to skip 3 other points just to go to this point. But I think the winners and losers here, the winner is the fan of golf, because I think everybody liked seeing the added drama of PGA versus LIV at the majors. And I think there was an increasing call for a Ryder Cup style LIV versus PGA end of the year sort of grudge match. And we're going to get that. We're going to get that. What we just saw at the PGA Championship, we're going to get that 4 times a year now. That's awesome. So I think the fans are the winners. I think the losers are, obviously, first of all, the lawyers for each side in this battle. They are all of a sudden out of a job, pretty much, although they'll probably be working on this contract. I think to the losers, and it's another group of losers, are the fans that wanted separate offerings. There weren't really many of them that really wanted both the PGA and LIV to be 2 separate golf offerings, and you could choose which one you wanted. I think that was going to take some time to really develop. So I would say that those fans are a little bit left out, but really just amazing. So there's other stuff too here, Richard. Like, I mean, do the PGA players, there's a meeting at 4 p.m. today, and by the time this gets out there, there'll be 4 hours until we know more about that. But do the PGA players feel, Colin Morikawa, Rory McIlroy, do they feel betrayed by this? Are the PGA players that didn't go to LIV Golf, are they going to get some sort of payout? Or do they just miss the chance at a big paycheck for effectively doing nothing and taking, 18 months to play on another tour? So this story is going to go on, but I think that's also really interesting. And then just the last thing I want to throw in here, Richard, I'm sorry, it was a big salad of stuff, but
no, that's good.
A friend shared this with me, and I think it is so wild. And it's almost as if he knew something, but former President Trump wrote last year on the 18th of July last year, and I'm just going to quote this because it's kind of amazing. He said, quote, "All of those golfers that remain loyal to the very disloyal PGA and all of its different forms will pay a big price when the inevitable merger with LIV comes, and you get nothing but a big thank you from PGA officials who are making millions of dollars a year. If you don't take the money now, you will get nothing after the merger takes place and only say how smart the original signees were. Good luck to all," he says. This story is amazing. So anyway,
well, now you put me in a bind here, because I think you made some great points, but I don't want to endorse anything by former President Trump.
No. This just shows the color here, the interest of Twitter on this. So anyway,
yeah. You make, I mean, the fan really does benefit, because like we said, it's a languishing game. It, in all parts, a diminishing audience, and, an elderly audience. And all of a sudden it's, certainly we went to a LIV tournament. We just did a segment on a LIV tournament. It was fun. It was exciting. It was popping. It was, wasn't raucous, but it's certainly energized. And and I've got you're sporting a LIV hat, I'm sporting a Range Goats hat, because the team concept was kind of fun.
It was genuinely a fun event.
Yeah. I mean, they clearly had, they properly read the global golf situation, and determined it to be moribund is a term, but certainly, if not moribund, certainly underexploited, and not sufficiently maximized in terms of its global reach, or the level of competitive energy it could produce. And so it was right in this regard. I also think, in addition to the fans, the players. Now, even if you stayed, and this is one thing where former President Trump, is wrong. The players that stayed at the PGA made a boatload more money, because of the LIV situation. So it's not like they got Zippo. All their paychecks went up. But it also it validates the guys who jumped to LIV in the sense that they did it for whatever reasons, monetary, professional, whatever it was, personal, maybe a different schedule that got them more global and gave them more time at home. Who knows? But they are now, they'll be readmitted. They'll get their PGA Tour card back, and it'll be interesting how they do all these tournaments now. How they manage them, what moves out, because and it'll also be interesting to the configuration of the board of this combined entity. We obviously, Yasser Al-Rumayyan is the chairman, Jay Monahan's CEO, Ed Hurley, he is on there. He's another PGA guy. The majority of the board seats are going to be PGA. But I assume this has all been talked out, and that goodwill will prevail. And obviously, the influx of LIV money now makes this entity, my goodness, it's a grand time to be a professional golfer.
We chose the wrong career, Richard. We're not getting the same sort of guaranteed payout.
Get Pierce some clubs, and Coco too.
That's a good point, and there's a lot of unfortunate clips from Jay Monahan and a lot of the pro PGA golfers saying a lot of things that are out there forever. So that's interesting. And they've obviously worked it out. This is not just like an announcement that was made without any discussion. This has clearly been in the mix for a while. And like you said, I hope goodwill prevails and the interest of the sport prevails so that it doesn't get nasty at the board meetings, which, as I understand, will be a slight majority of PGA appointed board members, but Yasser Al-Rumayyan will be the chair. And so it's sort of like this House of Congress, or, it's like it's going to be an interesting mix. But man, is this fascinating. Like, this is just so incredible. So,
well, it has a whole other layer in the sense that, these, first of all, if you're Rory McIlroy or Tiger Woods or you're Jack Nicklaus or whatever, and you're really criticizing these guys, and you have to remember they're independent contractors. They can go do whatever they think is right. They suffered consequences. They were essentially, thrown out of the PGA, but they made choices. They have a right to make choices. A lot of that criticism was directed specifically at the sponsor of the LIV Tour, Saudi Arabia, and it's the regime, and criticisms about sports washing, criticisms about human rights, and all these things that Saudi, we know, we're down at, we deal with this all the time. All these things that Saudi Arabia, it needs to confront and is confronted by. But the issue of sports washing, so increasingly, and we've talked about this, I think from the Saudi perspective, they've moved past this a long time ago because they're thinking in bigger terms. They're thinking in both domestic terms as well as soft power terms. But it's fascinating, the discussion that a Rory McIlroy would have a year and a half ago, and the reasons why he was against it, which is primarily because of the sponsors of the LIV Tour. When now all of a sudden it's a co-partner in the enterprise where he makes his living. And you could criticize it all. It will be criticized. This is an example of sports washing, this sort of thing. But, again, from Saudi perspective, it's, the whole reason they went into it, they said two things. And one was, I think people dismissed outright, love of the game. We think it can be a better game and a more global game. The other was prestige, soft power, maybe an economic opportunity, but these were all part and parcel of it. But a lot of it was prestige because it was seen to be a loss leader, certainly initially, early on, maybe over time. And they've achieved that very quickly. extremely quickly. They've achieved both things. If you want to argue it, is that all right? Now we've a year ago, 2 years ago, we're 6 hours ago, we were massively antagonistic relationship with the PGA and the DP World Tour, maybe, and now we're partners. And by the way, the end result of this is going to be a better product. You're going to have better golf tournaments. You're going to have different formatted golf tournaments. You're going to have higher purse golf tournaments. You're going to have hopefully more energetic golf tournaments. Everybody benefits. And you can, there's going to be people wringing their hands. Oh, this is terrible because it's sports washing. Define it however you wish. But the key players here, the fans, the players, and presumably the entities that engage in this agreement have all benefited. Oh, we lost you. I think we lost your audio. Can you hear me?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. So I'm so tired that I had to mute, and then also
I just rambled on. I just put you to sleep. I'm sorry.
No, all good. But a call to prayer came on. That's why I initially muted it. I didn't want that as the background to what you were saying.
Well, my phone went off, and you.
Emergency pods going great. Richard Brooks Koepka just tweeted, welfare check on Brandel Chambly. I mean, Twitter is absolutely on fire right now. And so everyone's going to be weighing in. We're going to hear from Rory. We're going to hear from these pros. And my gosh, that's it's a hilarious tweet. I mean, this is just, and our phones are blowing up. Richard, our daily newsletter, The Review, got a bunch of replies. So, I mean, this is a seismic event. And so expect us, for those of our very regular listeners who don't love when we talk about golf, they'd rather us talk more about the Saudi economy or society. Expect a little bit more of this to come. But Richard, I think we put a bow on it there and wait for some more information to come out and touch back on it in our 90th episode in 3 days.
Yes. Yes, and kudos to you for digging in and holding on out there. I know, as like I said, the sleep is closing in.
Well, you know how to do it, right? You get here, and you've done it a million times. You have to push through the jet lag, and then you're good coming over. Going back is always super weird, but yeah. So I'm here. I'm trying to stay awake, and this has helped me a lot. So thank you, Mr. Wilson. And yeah, I'll see you on Friday or Thursday.
Yes.
Episode 90. We've got a great one coming up, so we can talk again twice in a week, Richard. This is pretty good. On the air, I should say.
This was great, and again, it's a blast doing this with you always, Lucien. And then it's so nice to have a format that we can respond quickly to this. And we also, we have to pat ourselves on the back because we have a track record of talking about this.
Yes,
and that we obviously talked about it because we thought it was meaningful and worth the words.
And kudos to you, Richard, because we went to the last LIV Golf event before the merger, so we are. I like to think part of history, the 966 boys. Let's see the range go.
Exactly. Exactly. If we'd have missed it, we would have just been like, bandwagoners, but no, heck no. We went to LIV when it was just LIV.
Yep. And if you're in Riyadh, come say hi. You also know how unbelievably warm it is. I packed all of my best winter coats into my suitcase, and I'm wearing them now, and I'm just sweating my face off here. But yeah, Richard, great stuff. Thank you very much. Emergency pod, I think a success.
Emergency pod. It's all, gabbing with you is always a good thing. So it's a success.
Success. When we hit record and then people listen, it's easy, really. See you soon. Thanks, man.
Yeah, sure. All right.